My iPad died, but I'm going to continue. She consistently fled, deliberately shunning the spotlight. She consistently fled from any recognition of her special status, choosing instead to work behind the scenes with countless individual acts of kindness and self-sacrifice for her fellow Jews. The many stories about the Rebbetzin that began to surface only after her passing paint a picture of an exceptional Jewish figure whose entire life was an example of nobility, devotion, and courage. In her later years, the Rebbetzins' health was less than optimal, yet she was so self-effacing she refused to bother her husband with her problems. It's very important for me to avoid causing the Rebbe sorrow. She once replied when someone pointed out that if people would come from around the world to seek the Rebbe's blessing for such matters, surely she could do the same. Rebbetzin Chaim Mishka chose to live in the shade of the luminaries who surrounded her, but by striving to emulate her example, we ensure she continues to illuminate our world forever. That's from the director of L'Chaim publication I was reading from in the previous video. And this one, his name is Shmuel Butman. And there's a few Torah teachings. Bless me. On this weekly Torah portion that I'll share here from Sefer HaMamarim, says, interpreting certain things, they say that there's a little deeper meaning we could get from it. It says, Israel encamped opposite the mountain. The Torah was specifically given on a mountain so that the children of Israel would elevate and spiritually purify the physicality of the world. This is hinted to by the mountain, which is dust of the earth but is high, symbolizing the elevation of matter and its purification. Another thing from Sefer HaMamarim, which is the book of the speeches. The entire Mount Sinai smoked Ashan because the Lord had descended upon it in fire. The giving of the Torah at Sinai is associated with fire to teach us that a Jew should always worship God with a fiery enthusiasm, eagerness, and warmth, the ability for which was conferred at Mount Sinai. The three letters of the word Ashan, that was from Sefer HaMamarim, and then Kuntrasim, which is, this is another Sefer HaMamarim Kuntrasim. It says, Moses spoke, Yidaber, and God answered him. These quotes are coming directly from Exodus. The first was 19:2, the second was 19:18. This is 19:19. The word Yidaber is actually a future tense, implying Moses will speak. It's etymologically related to the word Yadber, meaning he will lead and guide, a reference to the reflection of Moses that exists in every generation. And actually on their previous part where it said smoked, Ashan, Ayin Shenun, it stands for Olam, the world, the dimension, Ayin, the dimension of place, Shana, year, the dimension of time, and Nefesh, soul, the energy that animates the physical plane. The revelation of Sinai that signifies that from the point on we were given the ability to refine and elevate these two dimensions through Torah and mitzvot, through commandments and good deeds, and through learning the truth, the Torah, the code, the intentions, God's will, and infuse them with a godly light and vitality. So we're dimension uniters. And then finally this, over here it says 22, I am the Lord your God. And that was from Rabbi Shneur Zalman, who wrote the Tanya. He's also called the Alter Rebbe. He was the first of the 7 Chabad Lubavitcher Rebbes of the dynasty Chabad and Lubavitch. And so he wrote the Tanya. You can find it on the internet or at a bookstore, a Jewish one, or one that carries it. It should be sold also in other non-Jewish stores. It benefits everyone. Anyway, so it says, or it benefits, everything that can cause benefit can also cause harm, but it has power is what I'm saying. So it says, I am the Lord your God, 20:20, this is from Siftei Kohen. It says, the first of the 10 commandments is given in the singular, your God, as each individual's conception and understanding of God is different depending on his capacity for spirituality, knowledge of Torah, and individual service. Accordingly, each person who was present at Mount Sinai understood the commandment differently. And finally, now I'm going to say a story about the Alter Rebbe's daughter, Dvorah Leah. Alter Rebbe means like grandmaster. Anyway, her mother, Rachel, was a very unusual woman for her time, educated secretly by her unconventional father. Rachel eventually mastered not only the Torah Bible, the Chumash, but also the Talmud and the writings of Maimonides, and was especially expert in the Shulchan Aruch, the code of Jewish law. Her erudition in Jewish legal matters is illustrated by the following incident. Rachel's husband and father were walking on Shabbat. Suddenly, someone came running to tell them that the city's area of the marker which delineates the area where carrying is permitted on Shabbat in order to transfer from one domain to another, had broken. The two rabbis stood still, unable to remember the law under such circumstances. Rachel's father asked her what they should do. At first, she didn't want to reply, since it was frowned upon in those days for a woman to be learned, and she didn't want to alienate her new husband. But when her father pressed her, she answered, and everyone abided by her instructions. Upon returning home, they consulted the Shulchan Aruch and verified that Rachel's pronouncement had been correct. When Rachel had her own daughter, it was only natural she educated her in the same manner she had learned from her father. Rachel began teaching Dvar Leah regularly and systematically. In the course of time, Dvar Leah also became quite a scholar. She grew up with the wonderful qualities so exemplified by her mother, fond of her fellow beings, always interested in her neighbors, ready to help everyone. Her brother Baruch, on the other hand, was cold and reserved, preferring his own company to that of others. Because of Baruch's cold nature, there was no bond between the two siblings. Dvar Leah was grieved by her brother's attitude. Her mother saw and realized it was wrong, but it was beyond her comprehension. She was pained by Baruch's behavior and thought it might do him good to hear something of the family history that she had already told Dvar Leah. But he seemed so unapproachable, she kept putting it off. Unfortunately, Rachel waited too long. She became gravely ill and passed away. At the time of the death of her beloved mother, Dvar Leah was only 16 years old. She found some consolation for her loss by immersing herself in the care of her father, brother, and household. Not long after the passing of her mother, Dvar Leah's father succumbed to his emotional travail, and after a protracted illness, he too passed away. Dvar Leah, now an orphan, went to live with her aunt and uncle. Her brother Baruch disappeared without telling anyone of his destination. One day, Dvar Leah's aunt and uncle announced that they had located a suitable match for a young Torah scholar named Yosef Yitzchak. The young girl immediately ran to the graves of her parents, poured out her heart, asking for their blessings, only if the match was one which would be successful. Afterwards, she agreed to the young man. Dvar Leah was very frank with him, explaining she was inclined to follow the ways of her mother's family, who followed the teachings of Kabbalah and Hasidism. The young man listened attentively, and then, to Dvar Leah's happy surprise, he told her that he had long ago made the acquaintance of a certain disciple of the Baal Shem Tov and was thoroughly knowledgeable with his teachings. In fact, he was entirely in sympathy with the Baal Shem Tov's path of divine service. Even more astonishing, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak told her that he himself had met the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov had told him that he would meet his intended in Vitebsk, an orphan girl from a fine family. Dvar Leah was thrilled with all he told her and saw divine providence in their meeting. She had no doubt that this young man was her divinely chosen mate. The two went together to Dvar Leah's parents' graves and secretly agreed to marry on the following conditions. Yosef Yitzchak was to learn Torah with her 2 to 3 times a week. He was not to object to her continuing with her sewing and allow her to contribute monetarily to their household. They were to share equally in all that they did relating to Torah and mitzvah commandments. They were to keep the fact that she was studying Torah secret. They were to live as followers of the Baal Shem Tov. From all their earnings, they would put aside a 10th part for charity. They were to raise their children in the Hasidic way. If they had daughters, they would teach them Torah. After their marriage, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak was appointed as head of Vitebsk Yeshiva, and Dvar Leah was very happy with the life she and her husband had undertaken. And, enjoy.